James Jin hadn't worn jeans to work once in the 15 years he'd served as CEO of Tech Vision Enterprises. He was known for his signature look, custom-tailored suits, elegant silk ties, and polished leather shoes. His entire appearance spoke of success, power, and prestige. But that morning, something unusual happened. James walked into the company's parking lot wearing a faded navy hoodie, worn-out jeans, and old sneakers. He no longer looked like the commanding CEO of a tech empire, but just another new hire, an anonymous face joining the customer service center. This wasn't the first time James had gone undercover. For 5 years, he had dedicated a few days each year to embedding with frontline departments where he believed the soul and culture of the company were truly shaped. In those stints, he'd uncovered outdated systems, clunky processes, and the occasional power-abusing middle manager. But this time, what he discovered struck a nerve in a way no financial report ever could. At around 5:30 a.m., under dim street lights and a thin veil of autumn mist, James tried his best to appear like an eager morning shift employee. As he crossed the back end of the parking lot, he heard something faint, an unmistakable infant's cry carried by the wind. His eyes turned to a silver Honda Civic parked behind a large recycling bin. The windows were fogged, and a shadow moved within. His first instinct as a COO was to call security, but then he paused. There was something about the cry and the exhausted yet practiced motion of the woman inside that made him stop. She wasn't a stranger. Though they'd never met, James had reviewed the employee files for this department before starting his assignment. Her name was Sarah Martinez, a customer service representative who had been with the company for nearly 8 months. Holding his breath, James peered through the misted window. With calm but swift movements, Sarah changed the baby's diaper, warmed a bottle with a portable heater, and transformed the cramped backseat into a makeshift nursery. These weren't improvised actions. They were ritual, signs of a life no one should be forced to live. A single mother raising her child in the backseat of a car, in the very parking lot where she worked. James's chest tightened. It wasn't pity he felt, it was something deeper. Admiration, mixed with pain. A young woman, with nowhere to go home to, yet arriving at work every day with not a single trace of weariness or defeat on her face. He quietly followed from a distance as Sarah carried her baby, a diaper bag, and a laptop case toward the side entrance of the building, the very entrance to the daycare facility he had proudly built years ago. She kissed her child gently, handed the baby to the caretaker with a smile so warm it could melt steel, and showed no hint of her struggle. Every motion reflected survival instinct fused with fierce dignity. Inside the break room, James watched her freshen up, a dab of powder in the mirror, a quick bun to tidy her hair, and a careful smoothing of her uniform shirt, which had clearly been pressed the night before. No one who saw her would guess she had spent the night in a car. The name Jim Carter, just another nameless trainee. James knew he couldn't ignore what he had seen, but he also understood this was only the beginning of a journey. One that could change not just Sarah's life, but his own. Sarah Martinez wasn't just a capable employee. She was the embodiment of resilience. Amid life's chaos, she remained fiercely optimistic. While others took their lunch breaks to chat or decompress, Sarah dove into company training materials or patiently helped new hires navigate the complex customer service platform. She didn't just know her job, she lived and breathed it. One day, a particularly aggressive customer pushed one of her co-workers to tears. Sarah stepped in without hesitation, her voice calm but firm. Every word she spoke was chosen with precision, diffusing the situation while protecting the company's reputation. She handled it like a seasoned pro, earning quiet admiration from everyone around her. James, still in disguise, witnessed it all. The more he watched, the more conflicted he became. This wasn't just a competent employee. This was someone who embodied the values he'd scribbled on whiteboards in countless board meetings. Loyalty, grit, faith. One evening, as they both worked late, James asked her about her career goals. Her eyes lit up like a candle in the dark. She shared that she had been teaching herself how to code at the public library during breaks, using free Wi-Fi and online courses, hoping to one day transition to the tech support division. "I know it sounds like a long shot," she said, nervously twisting her pen. "But Tech Vision gave me a shot when no one else would. I'm a single mom, no college degree. Most companies wouldn't even give me an interview, but here, they saw potential, not my circumstances. That means something." Those words echoed in James's mind later that night as he sat alone in his car. He should have gone back to his luxurious penthouse apartment, voice-controlled lighting, panoramic city views, but instead he parked across the street from Sarah's Civic. He watched her settle in for another night, changing the baby, setting up a battery-operated fan, carefully hanging sunshades for privacy. Every motion was heartbreakingly efficient, well-practiced and quietly dignified. James felt a lump in his throat. A woman with such strength, living like this. Meanwhile, the company he led, proudly boasting the slogan "Empowering Dreams, Transforming Lives," had no idea. That night, he made a quiet call to Janet, his longtime assistant. "I need you to help me with something," he whispered, "and it has to remain completely confidential." He was about to place Sarah in front of a choice, a test, an opportunity, a chance to see whether what he'd witnessed was a mask for survival or the unshakable core of someone with integrity. 3 days later, during the lunch break, a sleek black Tesla pulled into the Tech Vision parking lot. From it emerged a striking woman in a razor-sharp Armani suit, exuding the confidence of someone used to owning every room she entered. She introduced herself as Regina Walsh, senior recruiter from Innovate Corp, a rival tech company. But in truth, she was Janet James's trusted assistant, thoroughly briefed and trained for this precise moment. As Sarah returned from the daycare center, still in her modest uniform with a few faint baby food stains, despite her best efforts, she was intercepted. "Sarah Martinez?" Regina asked, her voice polished but direct. "I have a proposal I think you'll want to hear." Inside a small meeting room, the air thick with tension, Regina laid out glossy documents with the smoothness of a high-stakes negotiator. "Innovate Corp has been monitoring your performance," she said, sliding a portfolio across the table. "Your de-escalation skills, your consistency, your leadership. These are rare traits." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Her eyes widened. $75,000, 0 cents annual salary, double her current income, comprehensive health care, a pathway to a technical role after just 3 months. And that wasn't all. As Regina slid one last sheet across the table, Sarah felt her world pause. It was a signing bonus big enough to buy a reliable car and 3 months of covered rent in a fully furnished corporate apartment. It felt like a dream, an exit route from the cold, the fear, and the fatigue. But deep inside, she also sensed a test. "There must be some mistake," Sarah whispered, her voice catching in her throat. She had never graduated from college, and her experience was limited to her current job. How could a major company like Innovate be interested in someone like her? Regina didn't let her dwell on it for long. With the smooth tone of someone well-versed in negotiation, she replied, "We prioritize talent over degrees. And here," she pulled out a performance report, "is clear evidence of that." Under the conference room lighting, Sarah saw the undeniable numbers. Her customer satisfaction score was over 40% higher than the industry average, and she successfully resolved 95% of escalated complaints on the first attempt. For the first time, the data made her feel truly valued. Her mind raced. With that salary, she could afford a 2-bedroom apartment, a real room for Emma, with walls and a ceiling instead of a car roof. She could buy a crib, diapers, toys, all the things she used to only dream about through shop windows. It was all just one signature away. Then Regina leaned in, her smile fading slightly, her voice dropping like she was about to share a secret. "There's one condition," she said, as if it were an afterthought. Sarah looked up. "One condition? We need someone to start immediately. If you accept, you'll need to resign from Tech Vision today and start with us tomorrow." The words hit like a bomb. Today? Tomorrow? No notice, no time to prepare, no chance to say goodbye? Sarah had never made rash decisions, especially not with Emma depending on her. Regina continued, her smile now edged with something colder. "You see, this position is a bit sensitive. We're about to launch a new customer service platform, and we need someone with insider knowledge, someone who understands how our competitor's system works." She paused, lowering her voice even more. Of course, this conversation never happened. The room felt instantly heavier. The air carried the faint scent of plastic from the whiteboard, mixed with something more intangible, an uneasy tension. In the adjacent room, James held his breath, watching through the one-way glass. This was the defining moment, the ultimate test. He wasn't sure what he hoped for more, a proud refusal or a desperate acceptance. His heart weighed heavy, not because a deal might fall apart, but because the soul of his company was being placed on the line. Sarah hadn't answered yet, her eyes fixated on the bold number, enough to change her life. But then, from somewhere deep within, a chill crept over her. The pressure, the secrecy, the vague expectations. It reminded her of Emma's father, who had once promised the world, only to manipulate, control, and betray. And then she thought of the daycare at Tech Visions, of Jenkins, the sweet, middle-aged caregiver who always had an extra smile and warm hug for Emma. Sarah looked up at Regina and asked, "Does your child care facility accept infants under 12 months? A flicker of hesitation crossed Regina's face, her polished facade beginning to crack. "We can refer you to some excellent providers," she answered, trying to recover her composed smile. Sarah nodded slowly, but her expression had changed. The brightness in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a distant look, as if she were staring down a path she no longer wished to walk. She was no longer just a mother seeking an escape. She was someone who saw clearly what this choice would cost. A road paved with money and promise, but one that risked losing herself. Sarah looked at the papers on the table as if they were tickets to another life. A life where she wouldn't have to dress her daughter in donated hand-me-downs, juggle unpaid bills, or accept pity from kind souls like Jenkins, who often slipped her extra diapers under the pretense that they were about to expire. She thought of her supervisor, who never asked why she needed so many overtime shifts. She thought of Jem, the new guy who always saved her a fresh cup of coffee in the morning. Quietly, Sarah gathered the documents and slid them back across the table to Regina with a motion that was gentle but resolute. "Thank you for considering me," she said calmly, her voice soft but unwavering. "But I have to decline. I know you might think I need more time to think it over, but honestly, I don't. I appreciate the offer, but I can't walk away from Tech Vision like this. They gave me a chance when no one else would. Maybe to them I'm just another name in the system, but to me, they're hope." Regina made one final attempt, but Sarah was already standing. She smoothed her shirt, adjusted her hair as if preparing to face a difficult customer. "I need to get back to work. My break ended 5 minutes ago and I've got customers waiting." With that, she turned and walked out, shoulders squared, head held high. From behind the one-way mirror, James couldn't take his eyes off her. He recognized that look. Steadfast, unshaken, and touched with a quiet strength. He quickly typed out a message, Proceed to phase 2. Sarah had no idea that her refusal was only the beginning of a deeper test, one that would challenge not only her loyalty, but also her values: integrity, sacrifice, and motherhood. That night, the parking lot, once familiar, suddenly felt alien. Sarah sat in her silver Civic, scanning the surroundings like she no longer belonged. The space that had served as a bedroom for months now seemed unbearably small. The numbers from the contract echoed in her mind like a fading dream. Through the fogged windows, she watched her co-workers drive off, headed to warm homes, family dinners, laughter. And she slipped quietly back into the shadows. Emma stirred in her sleep. Her tiny fingers clutched the corner of an old blanket, the only thing they had left from their previous apartment before eviction. Sarah whispered, brushing a hand against her daughter's cheek. "Sweetheart, am I doing the right thing?" She opened her phone and checked her bank account. The balance flashed: $47.81. Payday was nearly 2 weeks away, and half of it was already earmarked for diapers and formula. The car's temperature read 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Winter was coming, and they couldn't survive much longer in the parking lot. She thought about Regina's offer. It wasn't just about the money, it was what it implied. They didn't only want her customer service skills. They wanted access, insight into TechVision's systems. She might not have high-level clearance, but she knew enough to be valuable to a competitor. Then, a memory returned. Her first interview at TechVision. She'd been honest about her situation, about Emma, about having no degree. The HR manager didn't judge her, didn't pry. They simply asked, "Are you a fast learner? Are you willing to try?" No scrutiny, no questions about Emma's father, just trust, a chance. Outside, the night grew colder. Sarah wrapped another blanket around Emma. Then she opened her old laptop, locked with her first paycheck and connected to the building's Wi-Fi. The screen flickered on. She opened a blank document and titled it, "The Choice." Her fingers trembled as she began typing, the words mirroring the turmoil in her chest. Pros of accepting the offer from Innovate Corp: double the salary, immediate housing, comprehensive health insurance for Emma, faster promotion opportunities. Must quit TechVision immediately. No daycare for infants under 12 months. Requires disclosing TechVision system knowledge. No Jim, no Jenkins. No one who truly knows or understands me. She typed more slowly now. Under the glow of the laptop screen, a tear slipped onto the keyboard. Not from sadness, but from the realization that, even if the world promised her everything, nothing could replace the people who had stood by her from the beginning, who believed in her before she had anything to offer. Sarah glanced over her pros and cons list one more time. The pros were obvious: money, housing, insurance. But the cons, they weren't just about logistics. They were about losing herself. As if to step into that seemingly perfect future, she'd have to abandon the most beautiful parts of who she was. As she pondered her decision, a chat notification popped up. It was from Jim. "Hey, you left your training manual on your desk. Don't worry, I put it in your drawer. See you tomorrow." That short, everyday message brought tears to her eyes. No one had ever done something like that for her at any previous job. At TechVision, she wasn't just employee 247, she was Sarah, Emma's mom. The woman who brought homemade casserole to team lunches, the one who stayed late to help coworkers learn the new software updates. Outside, thunder rumbled. A flash of lightning split the night sky, its reflection catching in Sarah's eyes. She held Emma closer as the baby stirred in her sleep, her heart aching with the weight of reality. If it were just about her, she might have chosen the easier path. But now things were different. She opened her email and typed the subject line, Regarding the offer from Innovate Corp, her hands trembled for a moment, then steadied. Dear Ms. Walsh, thank you for your generous offer. After careful consideration, the words came easily now, flowing like a quiet affirmation of who she really was. When she hit send, a bolt of lightning lit up the parking lot. In that brief glow, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the rearview mirror. Still a single mother living in a car, but now with eyes that no longer hesitated. She leaned down, gently kissed Emma's forehead and whispered, "Once upon a time, there was a princess who didn't live in a castle, but she had something more precious than gold or jewels. She had integrity." Across the city, in a sleek, glass-walled penthouse, James Chen set down his wine glass as his phone buzzed. A message from Regina lit up the screen. Declined. Moving to final phase. James smiled. It was a quiet smile, full of pride. Sarah Martinez had just passed a test that she never even knew she was taking. The next morning, when Sarah arrived at her desk, an urgent email was waiting for her. Urgent. Please report to the executive suite floor 15 immediately. Her heart pounded. Had someone found out she was living in the parking lot? Had her rejection of Innovate's offers somehow gotten back to management? As the elevator rose, so did her anxiety. She had never been to the 15th floor, the domain of executives, power, and major decisions. A different world entirely. When the doors opened, she hardly recognized the space. All glass and sunlight, the city stretching out far below her feet. And standing there to greet her was a familiar face, Regina Walsh. But this time there was no Innovate logo on her name badge. It read, Tech Vision. Sarah froze. "This way, Ms. Martinez," Regina said with a warm smile, leading her into a large conference room. At the head of the long tables stood a man, waiting. Sarah stopped in her tracks. She recognized him instantly. The man whose portrait hung in the company lobby. The founder of Tech Vision, James Chen. But before she could fully process it, he smiled gently. "But I believe you know me better as Jim." Sarah nearly dropped her bag. "You're him?" James nodded. "Yes, I'm James Chen. But for the past few weeks, I've truly enjoyed being just Jim, your coworker." Sarah sank into the chair offered to her, her legs suddenly weak. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. The strange job offer, the urgent timeline, the questions about internal systems. None of it had been random. "I apologize for the deception," Hyeth James continued sincerely. "But I needed to know, does Tech Vision really live up to the values we claim to hold dear? And thanks to you, I got my answer." He slid a folder across the table, this time bearing the Tech Vision logo. But unlike last night's documents, this one offered an entirely different path. A reward, not for desperation, but for integrity. Inside was a performance review with her name on it. But the title at the top made Sarah's breath catch. Director of Customer Experience Innovation. She looked up, stunned. James met her gaze, his voice steady. "This isn't charity, Sarah. This is recognition for your talent, your dedication, and your integrity." He gave her a moment to take it in. The listed salary was triple her current pay, with stock options, full benefits, and immediate enrollment in the executive housing program. Sarah couldn't hold back the tears. Not because of the money, but because for the first time, she wasn't just accepted. She was believed in. She was respected. She was empowered. At the bottom of the page, written by hand, were the words that broke her completely. "Thank you for showing us what Tech Vision's values truly mean." James pressed a button on the conference room phone. The door opened, and a facilities manager walked in with a set of keys. "Your new office is on this floor," James smiled. "And your executive suite at Tech Vision Towers just across the street is ready. You can move in today." Sarah tried to compose herself, but the tears kept coming. She clutched the keys, feeling the weight of everything that had changed, not just around her, but within her. "But why test me like that?" she asked, her voice shaking but her gaze unwavering. Why not just help me when you saw I was living in my car? James leaned forward, eyes serious. Because Tech Vision doesn't just need capable people, Sarah. We need people who hold on to their ethics even when no one's watching, who choose the right thing over the easy thing, who see the bigger picture. He smiled gently. In other words, we need more people like you. And in that moment, the full reality hit her. No more freezing nights in the Civic. No more choosing between lunch for herself or diapers for Emma. No more hurried sponge baths in public restrooms. More importantly, she hadn't just survived. She had risen. And now she would become the person who created opportunities for others like her. There's only one condition, James added, his voice soft but full of meaning. Sarah looked at him. Her hands had stopped trembling. Well, two, actually, he smiled, checking his watch. First, I want you to help design a company-wide program to identify and support employees in crisis. And second, you start right now. We've got a board meeting in an hour. I'd like you to present your vision for improving our customer experience. Sarah took a deep breath. She no longer felt small or helpless. She wasn't waiting to be rescued anymore. She was ready to lead. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Chen, she said, standing tall and adjusting her worn-out uniform. James shook his head, grinning warmly. Just call me James. And Sarah, you never let me down. That afternoon, Sarah stood in the doorway of her new apartment at Tech Vision Towers. The two-bedroom unit was fully furnished, filled with warm light and spacious serenity that felt like something out of a dream. Emma rested in her arms, both of them still trying to believe how much had changed and how quickly. The moving crew arranged by James worked quickly, though in truth, they only had to transfer 2 suitcases of clothes, a few baby items, and a small box of family photos. When Sarah opened the closet in the master bedroom, she couldn't hide her astonishment. Inside was a row of brand-new professional outfits perfectly tailored to her size, carefully chosen for her new leadership role. All set, Miss Martinez, said one of the interior designers. Sarah followed her to the small adjacent room and nearly lost her breath. The walls were painted a soft, soothing mint green. A modern crib stood near the window, a plush velvet rocking chair in one corner, and small bookshelves filled with children's stories lined the wall. Hanging above the changing table was a handmade mobile persona, tiny silver stars and crescent moons gently swaying, a quiet reminder of the nights she and Emma once counted stars through the car window. The building's concierge service handled all her needs, from arranging grocery deliveries to scheduling Emma's overdue pediatric appointments. And, most astonishing of all, the high-end daycare facility, known for its 6-month waitlist, had a spot reserved just for Emma. Starting the very next day, that evening, as the city sank into the glow of a golden sunset, Sarah sat on the brand-new sofa in her executive apartment, gazing through the expansive windows. The sky looked like it had been painted in gold. Emma played happily on a soft carpet, surrounded by more toys than she'd ever seen, things that, not long ago, had been beyond their reach. A notification buzzed on her new company-issued phone. Her first executive team meeting was scheduled for 9:00 AI the next day. Sarah opened her laptop, the latest model she had only dreamed of owning, and began reviewing the materials James had sent. Her new title, Director of Customer Experience Innovation, wasn't just a nameplate. It was a real position with real responsibilities, managing a team of 50 people and having the authority to propose changes that could impact thousands of customers and employees. A soft knock at the door. It was Regina, no longer the mysterious recruiter, but now her official executive mentor. Thought you might need this, Regina said with a warm smile, holding up a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. First day as an executive can be a little overwhelming. For the next hour, Regina walked Sarah through the essentials: how to run meetings, lead a team, and stay grounded under pressure. James never does anything halfway, she said. When he believes in someone, he'll move mountains to help them succeed. But he also expects results. Sarah nodded, her eyes already gleaming with ideas. We need better integration between customer service and tech support, and the training program should be more flexible, especially for parents working odd shifts. Regina smiled, recognizing the fire James had seen in Sarah from the very beginning. There's one more surprise, Regina added, pulling out yet another folder. Sarah laughed. I'm starting to think Tech Vision runs on paperwork and life-changing documents. Inside was a proposal for a new company initiative called Second Chance. James wants you to lead this, Regina explained. It's a comprehensive support system for employees facing hardship. Housing assistance, emergency child care, financial counseling. You're the perfect person to build it. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she flipped through the pages. This wasn't just a program, it was an extension of herself, a helping hand reaching back to others like the woman she once was. Talented, but buried by circumstance. The program was fully funded. Partners were already on board, from shelters and daycare centers to financial institutions. Everything was in place, waiting for a leader. That night, as Emma slept soundly in her new crib under the quiet watch of a modern baby monitor, Sarah stood at her floor-to-ceiling window. Below, she could see the parking lot, specifically the spot behind the recycling bin that had once been her and Emma's home. Now it was empty, lit only by a lonely streetlight. She pressed her hand to the glass. Outside was the cold, inside was warmth, and a future she never imagined. Tomorrow, she would step into her new role, face new challenges. But tonight, she allowed herself to simply be grateful, not just for the material changes, but because she had stayed true to her values when they were tested the most. 5 years later, Sarah Martinez stood before a packed auditorium at Tech Vision's annual shareholders meeting. Behind her, the screen displayed the metrics from the Second Chance program. Stage lights shimmered off her neatly styled hair, sharp blazer, and polished VP badge. In the past 5 years, she began, her voice strong, we've helped over 300 employees transition from crisis to stable careers. Our retention rate for participants is 94%, and 68% were promoted within their first 18 months. The screen displayed realities changed. A single father who once lived in a shelter now heading cybersecurity. A former domestic abuse survivor who became a regional sales director. A veteran battling PTSD, now managing global client relations. Sarah never mentioned that she still met with every participant in the program, sharing her own story to offer hope. She never spoke about how the parking lot where she once slept had been turned into a transitional housing center with childcare and job training classrooms, nor about the mentorship network she had built, pairing struggling employees with seasoned executives to guide their growth. After the presentation, James approached her, his eyes filled with pride. "Remember when you used to hide everything?" he asked softly. Sarah laughed, adjusting her name badge. "Sometimes I walk past my old parking spot just to remind myself how far we've come." "Mom!" A small voice called from the doorway. Emma, now 6 years old, ran in, her school uniform a bit rumpled from a long day. She flung herself into her mother's arms as applause echoed through the hall. Sarah bent down, hugging her daughter tightly, and in that moment, amid the lights, the applause, and the warmth of a child's embrace, she realized this journey hadn't just changed the lives of 2 people. It had changed an entire system. Later that day, Emma bounced out of her first-grade classroom, her face glowing with curiosity and joy from a day of learning. Behind her walked Marcus, Sarah's husband of 2 years, who had once served as Tech Vision's legal counsel and had fallen in love with both mother and daughter with his whole heart. "Ready for your surprise?" James asked, smiling warmly at Emma. Together, the 3 of them stepped into the elevator and rode to the newly completed top floor of Tech Vision. When the doors opened, they were met with a space unlike anything the company had ever built. A combined emergency housing center, 24-hour childcare facility, and comprehensive resource hub for employees in need. "Welcome to the Martinez Center for Employee Empowerment," James said, unveiling the gleaming silver plaque by the entrance. Sarah raised a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. For a moment, she could hardly breathe, not from lack of air, but from the sheer weight of gratitude swelling in her chest. And within his eyes knew, this isn't just about helping people in crisis. This is about redefining how companies view their responsibility to their people. And it all began with one person, the one who chose integrity over the easier path. The heart of the new center was the Give to Grow program, designed by Sarah herself. A compassionate model where every person helped would one day become a mentor for someone else in need. A ripple effect of kindness with no limits. That evening, in their penthouse apartment where city lights stretched to the horizon, Sarah tucked Emma into her princess bed. Like every night, the little girl whispered, "Tell me the car story again, Mom." Sarah smiled, sitting at the edge of the bed, gently stroking her daughter's soft hair. Once upon a time, there was a mother and her baby, and all they had was an old car and a dream. They thought they were alone, but really, they were just at the beginning of their journey. Emma knew every detail by heart, but she still asked to hear it each night, as a reminder of where everything began. "And then," Emma yawned, "the king of the company turned out to be the guy who brought you coffee." Sarah chuckled softly. "That's right. But the real magic wasn't his help. It was what we learned. Sometimes, holding on to your values matters more than taking the shortcut." After Emma drifted off to sleep, Sarah stood silently at the floor-to-ceiling window. On her desk wasn't a contract or a performance review, but a nomination form for CEO succession. James was retiring next year, and he had personally submitted her name. Her phone buzzed gently. From "On call, Martinez Center. Urgency case. A mother and 2 children just arrived. They could use a friendly face. If you're available." Sarah didn't need to read the rest. She had already grabbed her coat and stepped into the elevator. As the stainless steel doors reflected her image, a confident, grounded woman in leadership, Sarah smiled. She was no longer the young woman living in her car, but she was still the same person at her core. Someone who understood that true success isn't about climbing alone. It's about reaching back and pulling others up with you. As she stepped into the center that bore her name, Sarah paused for a moment, her fingers brushing the engraved words beneath the shining silver plaque. Everyone deserves a second chance to prove their worth. The greatest challenges in life often come disguised as impossible choices, and the greatest rewards don't come from what you gain, but from what you refuse to lose. Your integrity,